A quiet man was violently pushed against a police cruiser on a sunny Malibu beach. Heavy metal handcuffs snapped tightly around his wrists while his loyal German shepherd watched closely. A wealthy couple stood nearby, demanding his arrest over a few harmless grains of sand. They truly believed their expensive clothes and high status gave them the absolute power to ruin a stranger's life. The local police agreed and treated him like a dangerous criminal without checking a single piece of identification. But everyone on that beach made a catastrophic mistake. That quiet man in the faded clothes was not a drifter. He was an active-duty Navy SEAL. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments which country you are watching from, and if you love stories that melt your heart, please subscribe to support our channel. The Pacific Ocean stretched out wide and blue under the early morning sky. Small waves crashed against the shore at Malibu Beach. The air felt crisp. The salt spray stung slightly, but Hudson welcomed it. He breathed in deeply. The cool ocean breeze cleared his mind. Hudson walked near the water edge. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and a lean build. His dark hair was buzzed close to his scalp. He wore a faded gray t-shirt and dark board shorts. Nothing about his appearance stood out. He liked it that way. For the past 6 months, he had been deployed overseas. He was an active-duty Navy SEAL. His world usually consisted of loud noises, heavy gear, and high stakes. Today, he just wanted quiet. Right beside him walked Rex. Rex was a large German shepherd with a thick black and tan coat. His ears stood straight up. His golden eyes scanned the beach. Rex was not just a pet. He was a highly trained working dog and Hudson's closest companion. They moved together with a quiet rhythm. Hudson did not need a leash. He did not need to shout commands. A simple hand gesture or a subtle shift in his posture was enough. Rex understood. Hudson stopped and picked up a piece of smooth driftwood. He weighed it in his hand. Rex stopped immediately. The dog sat back on his haunches. His tail swept back and forth across the wet sand. He locked his eyes on the wood. "Ready?" Hudson said quietly. He threw the driftwood far down the shoreline. Rex took off. The dog kicked up sand as he sprinted. His muscles bunched and stretched with incredible speed. He reached the wood just as the water washed over it. Rex snatched it in his jaws, turned sharply, and trotted back to Hudson. Rex dropped the wood at Hudson's feet and sat down again, panting happily. Hudson knelt and rubbed the thick fur behind the dog's ears. "Good boy," Hudson said. He smiled. It was a rare, genuine smile. For an hour, they owned the beach. The sun slowly climbed higher. The sky turned from pale orange to bright yellow. The tide began to retreat. Hudson walked slowly. He let the cold water wash over his bare feet. He watched the seagulls dive for fish. He listened to the rhythmic sound of the waves. It grounded him. It reminded him that there was still peace in the world. But peace never lasts long on a public beach in Southern California. By 8 o'clock, the atmosphere shifted. Cars began to fill the parking lot near the highway. The distant hum of traffic grew louder. Families arrived with bright umbrellas and plastic buckets. Surfers paddled out into the breaks. The quiet morning was over. Hudson did not mind the families or the surfers. They were part of the beach life. He whistled softly to Rex. They turned around and started the long walk back toward the entrance. They stayed near the dry sand area to avoid the wet towels and scattered toys of the early arrivals. Hudson kept a relaxed pace. Rex trotted right at his left knee. Ahead of them, a loud voice broke over the sound of the ocean. "No, put it there. Not in the wet sand. You will ruin the blanket." Hudson looked up. 2 people were making their way down the wooden stairs to the beach. They were a young couple. The man wore a pristine white linen shirt, unbuttoned halfway down his chest, and designer sunglasses. His hair was perfectly styled. The woman wore a bright pink bikini under a sheer cover-up. A large luxury tote bag hung from her shoulder. She held an iced coffee in one hand and pointed aggressively with the other. They carried an excessive amount of gear. The man dragged a heavy, wheeled cooler. The woman carried two oversized, striped beach chairs. They looked completely out of place on the rugged sand. They looked like they belonged at a private resort pool. The couple stopped right in the middle of the main walking path. They did not move toward the open spaces closer to the water. They just dropped their things exactly where they stood. "This spot is perfect," the woman said loudly. She dropped her heavy tote bag onto the sand. The man grunted and let go of the cooler handle. He wiped sweat from his forehead. He kicked a pile of sand out of the way. Then he grabbed a massive, intricately patterned picnic blanket and threw it open. The wind caught the fabric. It fluttered wildly before settling down, covering a large section of the walkway. Hudson watched them for a moment. He altered his path slightly to give them a wide berth. He did not want any trouble. He just wanted to get to his truck and go home. Rex stayed close. The dog noticed the sudden noise and the erratic movements of the couple. His ears swiveled toward them. However, Rex remained perfectly calm. He followed his owner's lead. The woman started unpacking her bag. She pulled out a portable speaker, a bottle of expensive champagne, and 2 crystal glasses. She turned on the speaker. Loud electronic music immediately blasted out, drowning out the sound of the waves. Hudson frowned slightly. The noise was grating. He kept his eyes forward and continued walking. They were almost past the couple's sprawling setup. The path narrowed between the thick beach grass and the edge of the oversized blanket. Hudson stepped carefully. He signaled for Rex to stay tight to his leg. They just needed a few more steps to clear the area entirely. Suddenly, a seagull swooped down low over the beach, chasing a smaller bird. It darted right across their path. Rex reacted on instinct. He did not bark. He did not break his stride. He simply turned his head quickly to track the bird. As he did, his back paw clipped the very edge of a small piece of driftwood, half buried in the sand. The wood flipped up. It sent a tiny spray of dry sand into the air. The wind caught the sand and blew it forward. A few grains landed silently on the edge of the patterned picnic blanket. It was a completely harmless accident. It was nothing but a few grains of sand on a beach. But the woman saw it. She gasped loudly. She dropped her crystal glass onto the blanket. She stared at the tiny speck of sand as if it were a deadly weapon. She then looked up and glared directly at Hudson and Rex. The quiet morning was officially over. The few grains of sand settled on the edge of the large patterned blanket. They were barely visible against the bright colors of the fabric. In any normal situation, nobody would have noticed them. The wind blew more sand across the beach, naturally, every second. But this was not a normal situation. The woman in the pink bikini stared at the tiny speck of dirt. Her eyes widened. Her mouth opened in shock. She let out a sharp, piercing scream. The sound cut through the noise of the crashing waves and the distant highway traffic. It was not a scream of fear. It was a scream of pure, unfiltered outrage. "Oh my God!" she yelled. "My blanket! My limited edition blanket!" She dropped her crystal glass. It landed softly on the thick fabric and spilled a small amount of expensive champagne. She did not care about the drink. She pointed a trembling finger at the edge of the blanket, then jabbed it toward Hudson and Rex. "Keep that filthy animal away from us," she shrieked. Hudson stopped walking immediately. He did not flinch at the loud noise. His military training kicked in. He assessed the threat level quickly. There was no physical danger. There was only a highly agitated civilian making a scene over nothing. He looked down at Rex. The German shepherd sat perfectly still beside his left leg. The dog watched the screaming woman with mild curiosity. He did not bark. He did not growl. He just waited for his handler to give a command. Hudson raised his right hand in a calm, open gesture of peace. "Ma'am, I apologize," Hudson said. His voice was steady and low. He kept his tone completely neutral. "It was just a bit of sand from the wind. There is no damage done. We are just walking past." He stepped back to create more distance between them and the picnic setup. He wanted to de-escalate the situation immediately. He had no interest in arguing with strangers on his day off. But the woman did not want peace. She wanted an audience. "Are you blind?" she snapped. She stood up quickly and brushed non-existent dirt from her thighs. "Your stupid dog kicked sand all over my things. Do you know how much this setup costs? You probably do not even make that much in a year." Hudson kept his face entirely blank. He let the insult bounce off him. He had faced armed insurgents and survived brutal combat zones. A wealthy tourist throwing a tantrum did not affect his pulse rate at all. "Again, I apologize for the inconvenience," Hudson repeated calmly. "Have a good morning." He signaled Rex to move forward. He turned his body slightly to continue walking down the path toward the parking lot. That was when the man in the white linen shirt decided to intervene. He had been watching the exchange from his oversized striped beach chair. Now he stood up quickly. He puffed out his chest and took 2 aggressive steps forward. He placed himself directly in Hudson's path, blocking the exit. The man was slightly taller than Hudson, but lacked any real muscle definition. His face turned red with sudden anger. He wanted to play the role of the tough protector for his girlfriend. He wanted to assert dominance over the quiet stranger. "Hey, where do you think you are going?" the man barked. He pointed a finger directly at Hudson's face. "She is talking to you, buddy. You do not just walk away when we are talking to you." Hudson stopped again. The distance between them was less than 3 feet. The man invaded his personal space. Hudson's eyes locked onto the man's face. He analyzed the man's posture, his balance, his breathing. The man was tense, leaning forward, trying hard to look intimidating. "I apologized," Hudson said quietly. The volume of his voice dropped, but the intensity increased. "We are leaving. Step aside." "I will not step aside," the man shouted. He threw his arms out wide. "You and your mutt just ruined our morning. You have no respect. Look at you. You look like a homeless drifter. You probably do not even belong on this part of the beach." A small crowd began to form nearby. Families stopped setting up their umbrellas. Surfers paused on their way to the water. People pulled out their phones. They wanted to watch the drama unfold. The audience only fueled the wealthy man's fragile ego. "You need to pay for dry cleaning," the man demanded loudly. "Or you need to get down on your knees and wipe that sand off right now." Hudson let out a slow, controlled breath. "Move out of the way," Hudson said. It was not a request anymore. It was a clear command. The man sneered. He looked down at Rex. The dog was still sitting quietly, but his golden eyes were fixed entirely on the aggressive stranger. Rex sensed the shift in the atmosphere. "Or what?" the man challenged. "You are going to let your vicious dog attack me? Go ahead. I dare you." Before Hudson could respond, the man did something incredibly foolish. He stepped forward and swung his right foot in a fast, hard kick aimed directly at Rex's ribs. It happened in a fraction of a second. Hudson reacted faster. He shifted his weight and stepped into the man's space. He brought his left leg up and blocked the kicking leg before it could connect with the dog. The impact sent a shockwave up the man's shin. The man stumbled backward, losing his balance completely. He fell hard onto the sand, landing awkwardly on his side. Rex stood up instantly. A low, rumbling growl vibrated in his chest, his teeth bared slightly. He was ready to defend his handler and himself. "Rex, down!" Hudson commanded sharply. The dog dropped back into a seated position immediately. The growl stopped entirely. Total obedience. The woman screamed again. She rushed forward and dropped to her knees beside her boyfriend. "Oh my God, he attacked you. He assaulted you," she yelled. She looked up at the gathering crowd. "Did you see that? This maniac just attacked us?" The man groaned and rubbed his leg. He looked at Hudson with a mix of deep fear and extreme anger. He scrambled backward across the sand, trying to get away from the calm soldier and the highly trained dog. Hudson stood perfectly still. He did not advance. He did not threaten them. He just watched them with cold, calculating eyes. He knew exactly how this looked to the untrained observers around them. A wealthy couple was on the ground. A tall, rugged man and a large German shepherd stood over them. The narrative was already spinning out of his control. The man pulled his expensive smartphone from his pocket. His hands shook with rage. "You are going to jail for this," he screamed at Hudson. "I am calling the police right now. You are done. You hear me? You are completely done." He aggressively tapped the screen of his phone, dialing 911. The woman continued to yell at the bystanders, trying to rally them to her side. She pointed at Hudson repeatedly, calling him a thug and a public menace. The ocean breeze felt cold now. The peaceful morning was entirely shattered. Hudson knew the police were coming. He did not run. He did not argue. He simply stood his ground, waiting for the storm to hit. The man on the sand held his expensive smartphone tight against his ear. His hand trembled slightly, but his voice grew extremely loud and highly theatrical. He wanted everyone on the beach to hear his words. He wanted to control the entire narrative from the very beginning. Hudson watched him closely. He easily recognized this specific type of behavior. It was the frantic, dangerous energy of a coward trying to weaponize the police. "Yes, hello, 911. I need officers immediately at Malibu Beach," the man shouted into the phone. "We are near the central wooden stairs. We are being attacked." The woman beside him nodded vigorously. She rubbed her boyfriend's shoulder and glared up at Hudson with pure malice. "A man just violently assaulted me," the man continued. He forced a fake tremor into his voice to sound terrified. "He knocked me straight to the ground. He has a massive, vicious dog. He is threatening to let the dog tear us apart right now." Hudson did not interrupt the call. He knew that arguing with a liar on the phone only made the situation worse. It made you look highly agitated. It made you look guilty. Hudson simply stood with his feet planted firmly, shoulder-width apart. He kept his hands visible, open, and completely relaxed at his sides. He maintained a neutral, non-threatening physical posture. This was standard military protocol for dealing with hostile, unpredictable civilians. Let them talk. Let them expose their own hysteria. "No, I do not know him at all," the man yelled into the receiver. "He looks crazy. He looks incredibly dangerous. He just walked right into our private setup and attacked me for absolutely no reason. Please hurry up. He is still standing right over us." The man finally hung up the phone. He looked up at Hudson with a smug, triumphant expression on his face. He believed he had already won the battle. He believed his obvious wealth and his loud complaints would automatically make his story the undeniable truth. "They are coming for you," the man spat out bitterly. He scrambled to his feet, but made sure to keep a very safe distance. "You made a huge mistake today, buddy." "I told you to step aside," Hudson said quietly. "You decided to kick my dog. That was your mistake." "Liar!" the woman shrieked instantly. She picked up her fallen crystal glass from the sand. "He never touched your stupid dog. You just attacked him because you are jealous of us." The crowd of onlookers pressed closer to the scene. Morbid curiosity drew them in. People always love a public spectacle. Hudson slowly scanned the faces of the bystanders surrounding them. He saw a wide mix of expressions. Some people looked genuinely concerned about the yelling. Others simply held up their smartphones, recording the juicy aftermath for social media. None of these bystanders had actually seen the beginning of the incident. None of them saw the man attempt to kick the dog. They only saw what was happening in this exact moment. They saw a wealthy, well-dressed couple acting absolutely terrified. And they saw a tall, rugged, imposing man standing silently next to a large, powerful guard dog. Hudson understood human nature very well. People usually believe the loudest, most emotional voice in the room. The couple was currently putting on a very loud, very dramatic show. Rex remained seated perfectly still beside Hudson. The dog did not whine. He did not shift his weight. He perfectly mirrored his handler's absolute calm. A poorly trained pet would bark at the loud yelling. A poorly trained pet would pull hard on a leash. Rex did neither of those things. He just watched the screaming woman with sharp, highly intelligent eyes. Hudson briefly considered just walking away. He could easily disappear down the long beach before the authorities ever arrived. But leaving the scene of an alleged assault was a terrible tactical move. It heavily implied guilt. It would quickly turn a stupid misunderstanding into an active manhunt. He was an active duty Navy SEAL. He did not run away from false accusations. He chose to stand his ground. "Sir, you really need to calm down." A young male surfer from the crowd called out to the wealthy man. "Just wait for the police to handle it." "I am calm," the wealthy man shouted back, his voice cracking with panic. "This lunatic standing right there is the problem." Minutes passed slowly. The morning sun beat down heavily on the sand. The loud electronic music from the couple's portable speaker finally faded out. It left only the rhythmic crashing sound of the ocean waves and the nervous, quiet murmurs of the gathered crowd. Hudson checked his dark tactical watch. 4 minutes had passed since the emergency phone call. Police response times in this affluent area were notoriously fast. Then he heard it. The sound was faint at first, but it grew rapidly louder by the second. The sharp, high-pitched wail of police sirens aggressively cut through the calm morning air. The loud noise echoed off the massive, expensive beachfront houses lining the nearby highway. The wealthy man smiled widely. He puffed his chest out again. His fake courage fully returned now that his backup was finally arriving. "Hear that?" the man taunted Hudson. "That is for you. I hope you really like the inside of a jail cell." Hudson completely ignored him. He turned his head slightly toward the paved parking lot. He closely watched the main entrance of the beach. 2 local police patrol cars turned sharply into the lot. Their bright red and blue lights flashed aggressively against the morning sun. The thick tires squealed loudly as the drivers braked hard. The loud sirens cut off abruptly. A sudden, heavy silence fell over the beach in their wake. The heavy doors of the patrol cars flew open. 3 uniformed officers stepped out quickly. They immediately looked around, scanning the wide area for the violently reported assault. The woman in the pink bikini did not waste a single second. She immediately started waving her arms frantically in the air. "Over here! Over here! Help us!" she screamed at the absolute top of her lungs. The officers instantly spotted the large commotion. They secured their heavy-duty belts and began jogging quickly toward the wooden stairs that led down to the sand. They moved with intense urgency. They believed they were responding to a violent assault currently in progress. They were fully expecting to encounter severe danger. Hudson watched them approach the scene. He did not cross his arms over his chest. He did not put his hands in his pockets. He deliberately kept his palms open and facing forward. He mentally prepared himself to follow their instructions perfectly. He knew exactly how quickly these tense situations could escalate into violence if a suspect made any sudden movements. "Rex, stay," Hudson commanded, in a low murmur. The loyal dog did not even blink. He remained frozen in place like a solid statue. The officers hit the soft sand and ran heavily toward the group. The crowd of onlookers parted quickly to let the police through. The bright morning sun cast long, dark shadows behind the rapidly approaching officers. The real test of Hudson's famous military patience was about to begin. The storm had finally arrived on the beach. The 2 police officers sprinted across the soft sand. Their heavy boots sank deep with every step. They kept their hands resting firmly over their service weapons. Their eyes darted back and forth. They looked for the violent attacker described on the dispatch radio. They expected to find a chaotic brawl. Instead, they found a very different scene. The woman in the pink bikini did not wait for the officers to reach the group. She ran right toward them. Tears streamed down her face. She possessed an incredible ability to cry on command. She grabbed the arm of the lead officer. He was a tall man with a thick mustache and a stern expression. "Officer, thank God you are here," she sobbed loudly. She pointed a trembling finger directly at Hudson. "That man is completely insane. He attacked my boyfriend. He tried to let his dog bite us." The lead officer gently pulled his arm away from her grasp. He looked past her. He saw the wealthy man brushing sand off his expensive linen shirt. The man looked shaken but entirely uninjured. Then, the officer looked at Hudson. Hudson stood perfectly still. He did not look like a frantic criminal. He looked like a stone statue. His dark t-shirt and board shorts offered no clues about his identity. Beside him sat the large German shepherd. The dog mirrored his owner's absolute stillness. The second officer, a younger man with closely cropped hair, approached from the right side. He unclipped his radio. "Dispatch, we are on scene," the younger officer reported. "We have the suspect in sight." Hudson kept his hands open and clearly visible. He knew exactly how law enforcement officers were trained to assess threats. They look for nervous energy. They look for hidden hands. They look for sudden movements. Hudson gave them absolutely nothing to fear. He simply waited for them to initiate the dialogue. The lead officer walked closer. He stopped 10 feet away from Hudson. He created a safe tactical distance. "Sir, I need you to step back from the dog," the lead officer commanded sharply. His voice carried heavy authority. "The dog is fully trained and under my complete control," Hudson replied in a calm, even voice. "He will not move." "I did not ask for a status report on the dog," the officer snapped back. He did not like the calm tone in Hudson's voice. It felt like defiance to him. "I gave you a direct order. Step back." Hudson took one slow, deliberate step backward. He left Rex sitting alone. The dog did not whine or break his sitting position. The wealthy man suddenly felt very brave again. He walked up to stand right behind the younger officer. "He kicked me to the ground," the man lied loudly. "I was just trying to protect our property. He marched right into our space and assaulted me. You need to arrest him right now." The officers looked at the massive, expensive picnic setup. They looked at the crystal glasses and the champagne. Then they looked at Hudson's faded clothes. Bias worked quickly in the human brain. It created mental shortcuts. Wealthy people with luxury items were usually the victims in this affluent neighborhood. Quiet men in plain clothes with large dogs were usually the problem. The lead officer made his decision based entirely on visual assumptions. He completely ignored the basic principles of an impartial investigation. "Do you have any identification on you?" the lead officer asked Hudson. "My wallet is in my truck," Hudson answered plainly. "I am parked in the main lot." The officer frowned. "So you have no ID? And you are wandering around a private event area causing a disturbance." "This is a public beach," Hudson corrected him gently. "And there was no disturbance until that man attempted to kick my dog." "That is a complete lie," the woman shrieked from the background. "My boyfriend loves animals. He would never do that." The crowd of bystanders shifted nervously. A few people muttered to each other. Nobody stepped forward to defend Hudson. They only saw the aftermath. They did not want to get involved with the police. The younger officer rested his hand on his handcuffs. He looked at his partner for direction. The lead officer nodded slightly. "Sir, given the nature of the emergency call and your lack of identification, I am going to detain you while we sort this out," the lead officer said. Hudson narrowed his eyes slightly. Detainment was a standard procedure, but it was usually reserved for suspects who posed a flight risk or a physical threat. He posed neither. He was completely cooperative. "Officer, I am happy to answer any questions you have right here," Hudson said. He kept his voice perfectly steady. "I can also walk with you to my truck to retrieve my identification. There is no need for restraints." "I decide what is necessary," the lead officer replied coldly. He took 2 steps forward. He pulled a pair of heavy metal handcuffs from his duty belt. The bright sunlight glinted off the polished steel. The wealthy man smirked. He crossed his arms over his chest. He looked extremely satisfied. "Turn around," the officer ordered loudly. "Face away from me and place your hands behind your head. Interlock your fingers." Hudson did not move immediately. He processed the command. He understood the legal authority of the police, but he also recognized a severe overreaction fueled by deep prejudice. He looked at the officer's eyes. He saw no willingness to listen. He only saw the rigid enforcement of a hasty judgment. Rex let out a very low, almost silent rumble in his chest. The dog sensed the rising tension. The sight of the metal handcuffs triggered a strong protective instinct. "Rex, quiet," Hudson said softly. The rumble stopped instantly. "I will not tell you again," the officer warned. He unclipped his taser with his free hand. He was ready to escalate force against a man who had done absolutely nothing wrong. Hudson knew that resisting would only validate their false assumptions. He drew in a slow breath. He turned his back to the officers. He slowly raised his hands and placed them behind his head. He interlocked his fingers exactly as instructed. The cold metal of the handcuffs snapped tightly around his left wrist. The crowd watched in absolute silence. The cold steel of the handcuffs clicked shut. The sound was sharp. It echoed clearly over the steady crash of the ocean waves. Hudson stood perfectly still. He felt the heavy metal press tightly against his wrist bones. He did not pull away. He did not struggle. The lead officer checked the space between the metal and the skin. He tightened the cuffs securely. The officer then took a firm, aggressive grip on Hudson's left bicep. The crowd of bystanders completely surrounded them now. Dozens of smartphones pointed directly at Hudson. People recorded his every move. They whispered to each other. They judged the quiet man in the faded clothes. The wealthy man in the linen shirt laughed out loud. He walked 2 steps closer. He felt entirely safe now that the tall stranger was physically restrained. "Look at you now," the man sneered. He pointed a manicured finger at Hudson's chest. "You thought you could just push people around? You thought you owned this beach? You are nothing." The woman in the pink bikini stood right beside him. She crossed her arms and smiled a very ugly, satisfied smile. "He belongs in a cage," she said loudly. She looked directly at the recording cameras to make sure they caught her words. "People like him make this beautiful neighborhood completely unsafe for normal citizens. Thank you, officers, for protecting us." Hudson ignored their insults completely. He did not look at the couple. He focused his attention entirely on the 2 police officers. He needed to inject facts into this highly emotional and biased situation. "Officers," Hudson said. His voice was incredibly calm. It did not shake. It did not rise in volume. "My name is David Hudson. I am a Chief Petty Officer in the United States Navy. I am an active-duty Navy SEAL. I am currently stationed at the naval base just down the coast." The silence that followed his statement lasted only 2 seconds. Then the wealthy man burst into a fit of loud, obnoxious laughter. He clutched his stomach. He pointed at Hudson again. "A Navy SEAL? Are you kidding me?" The man looked at the crowd, expecting them to join his laughter. "Look at him. He looks like he sleeps under a highway bridge. You are a terrible liar, buddy. Real soldiers do not attack innocent people on the beach." The lead officer frowned heavily. He looked Hudson up and down. He saw the faded gray t-shirt. He saw the simple board shorts. He saw the bare feet covered in wet sand. He did not see a crisp military uniform. He did not see a shiny badge. He only saw a suspect trying desperately to talk his way out of an arrest. "Save the stolen valor routine for the judge," the lead officer said coldly. He gripped Hudson's arm tighter. "We hear that kind of lie every single week. Guys get caught causing trouble and suddenly claim they are special forces. It will not work today." "It is not a routine," Hudson replied evenly. "My military identification card is inside my wallet. My wallet is inside the center console of my black Ford truck. The truck is parked in space 42 in the main lot. You can send your partner to retrieve it right now. You can verify my exact identity in 5 minutes." The younger officer hesitated for a moment. He looked toward the paved parking lot. The logic was sound. A quick check would easily confirm or deny the story. But the lead officer shook his head firmly. He had already made up his mind. He refused to let the handcuffed suspect dictate the flow of the investigation. "We are not running errands for you," the lead officer snapped. "We will process your belongings down at the station after we book you." Rex watched the exchange closely. The large German shepherd sat perfectly still, but his powerful muscles were tightly coiled. He saw the strange men grab his handler's arm. He saw the metal chains binding his handler's hands. A deep, vibrating growl started low in the dog's chest. It was a clear warning sound. It meant the dog perceived a direct physical threat to his master. The younger officer took a quick step back. His hand flew instantly to the taser on his belt. He looked at the dog with wide, fearful eyes. "Control that animal right now," the younger officer yelled. "Or I will put it down." Hudson did not panic. He turned his head slightly toward the dog. "Rex, hold," Hudson commanded. The tone was absolute. The deep growl stopped immediately. The dog remained seated. However, his golden eyes never left the younger officer. "That dog is a deadly weapon," the wealthy woman shrieked again. "He ordered it to attack us earlier. You cannot just leave it here on the beach." The lead officer glared at Hudson. "You are coming with us to the patrol car right now. You are under arrest for assault and creating a public disturbance." The officer pulled hard on Hudson's arm, trying to force him to walk forward. Hudson stepped smoothly to avoid losing his balance, but he did not resist the physical pull. "What about the dog?" the younger officer asked nervously. He kept a very safe distance from Rex. "We cannot put that massive thing in the back of the cruiser. It will tear the seats apart." The lead officer grabbed his shoulder radio. "Dispatch, we have the suspect in custody. Send an animal control unit to our location immediately. We have a large, potentially aggressive canine that needs to be impounded." Hudson stopped walking immediately. He planted his bare feet firmly in the deep sand. The lead officer pulled his arm again, but Hudson felt like a solid brick wall. This was the red line. Arresting him was one thing. He could sort out the false charges at the police station. He could call his commanding officer later. But taking his highly trained military working dog to a local city pound was completely unacceptable. The risk to the dog was too great. "You cannot take the dog," Hudson said. His voice lost its gentle tone. A cold, hard edge replaced it. "He is a certified military working dog. He is federal government property. If animal control attempts to take him, you will be violating federal law." The wealthy man scoffed loudly. "Listen to this guy. Now the dog is in the military too? You are totally delusional." The lead officer lost the last bit of his patience. He shoved Hudson forward aggressively. "Keep moving," the officer shouted. "I do not care what kind of lies you spin. That animal is going to the pound, and you are going to a holding cell. End of story." Hudson stumbled slightly in the soft sand, but regained his perfect footing instantly. He kept his eyes fixed forward. He knew the situation was deteriorating rapidly. The local officers were blinded by their initial assumptions. They refused to investigate the scene. They refused to verify his claims. They simply wanted to remove the problem from the affluent beach as fast as possible. Hudson walked slowly toward the flashing red and blue lights of the police cars. Rex trotted faithfully right beside him, completely ignoring the officers. Hudson knew he needed a major intervention to stop them from taking his dog. He just did not know where it would come from. The flashing lights of the police cruisers painted the beach in harsh red and blue colors. Hudson walked steadily toward the cars. The deep sand made the walk difficult, but he maintained perfect balance. The lead officer kept a tight grip on his left arm. The officer pushed Hudson forward unnecessarily. Hudson did not push back. He conserved his energy and kept his focus incredibly sharp. Rex walked exactly one pace behind Hudson's right leg. The German shepherd ignored the yelling crowd. He ignored the wealthy couple. He only watched the men in uniform. The younger officer walked several yards away, constantly looking back at the dog. He held his radio close to his mouth. He urgently requested animal control to hurry to their exact location. They reached the first patrol car. The lead officer forced Hudson to stop immediately. "Spread your legs," the officer ordered loudly. "Put your chest against the trunk of the car." Hudson complied without hesitation. He leaned forward and rested his upper body against the warm metal of the cruiser. The officer began a rough, aggressive pat-down. He checked Hudson's pockets, his waistband, and his lower legs. He found absolutely nothing. Hudson carried no weapons. He carried no contraband. He only carried the quiet dignity of a man who knew exactly who he was. The wealthy couple followed the police to the parking lot. They wanted a front-row seat to the arrest. The man in the linen shirt leaned against a wooden post. He smiled broadly. "Make sure you check him for drugs," the wealthy man called out to the officers. "He looks exactly like the kind of guy who sells pills to kids on the boardwalk." Hudson closed his eyes for a brief second. He took a slow breath. The ignorance of the civilians was truly staggering. High above the beach, a massive luxury villa sat on a cliff overlooking the ocean. The property featured modern glass walls, perfectly manicured gardens, and a private wooden staircase leading directly down to the sand. A large summer party was in full swing inside. Soft jazz music drifted from the open patio doors. Waiters carried silver trays of expensive appetizers to the guests. The heavy glass door of the villa slid open. An older man stepped out onto the wide wooden deck. He wanted to escape the loud chatter of the party for a few minutes. He held a crystal glass of sparkling water in his right hand. This man was Admiral Thomas Vance. He was a high-ranking commander in the United States Navy. He oversaw special operations across the entire Pacific Fleet. He was a man of immense power, sharp intellect, and absolute discipline. He wore a crisp white polo shirt and neatly pressed khaki trousers. Even in casual clothing, he commanded immediate respect. He stood tall, his shoulders squared, his silver hair catching the bright morning sun. Admiral Vance walked to the edge of his wooden deck. He looked out over the vast, calm ocean. Then, his sharp eyes noticed the flashing red and blue lights down in the public parking lot. He frowned deeply. The police vehicles were parked directly at the base of his private property line. He watched the small crowd of onlookers gathering around the cars. He saw the wealthy couple pointing and shouting. Then, he looked closer at the center of the loud commotion. He saw the large black and tan German shepherd sitting obediently near the police car. Admiral Vance knew military working dogs intimately. He recognized the specific posture, the intense focus, and the muscular build. There was only one dog with that exact coloring in his current command. Vance narrowed his eyes. He focused entirely on the tall man pressed against the trunk of the police cruiser. He saw the faded gray shirt. He saw the broad shoulders. He saw the heavy metal handcuffs securing the man's wrists behind his back. The crystal glass slipped from the Admiral's hand. It shattered loudly on the wooden deck. Water and glass shards scattered across the expensive wood. Admiral Vance did not hesitate for a single second. He turned and marched quickly toward the private wooden staircase. His face hardened into a mask of pure, cold fury. He moved with the speed and purpose of a man walking directly into a hostile war zone. Down in the parking lot, the lead officer finished his physical search. "Stand up," the officer commanded Hudson. "We are going to wait right here until the dog catcher arrives. Then you are going in the back of the car." Hudson stood straight. He looked calmly at the angry officer. "You are making a massive mistake," Hudson said quietly. "You have the ability to verify my identity right now. You are choosing to ignore the facts." "I do not care about your facts," the officer sneered. He grabbed Hudson's handcuffed arms and pulled them upward slightly to inflict pain. "I care about keeping this beach safe from dangerous vagrants." "Hey!" A loud, booming voice echoed across the parking lot. The voice did not come from the crowd. It came from the wooden staircase. Everyone turned their heads. The lead officer let go of Hudson's arms. The wealthy couple stopped smiling immediately. Admiral Vance descended the last few steps and stepped onto the soft sand. He did not run, but his long, powerful strides ate up the distance incredibly fast. His face was set in stone. He did not look at the ocean. He did not look at the sunny sky. He looked only at the metal cuffs on his soldier. The crowd naturally parted to let him through. They sensed the sudden shift in power. He radiated an overwhelming aura of absolute authority. The younger officer stepped forward to intercept the older man. The officer raised his hand, trying to assert control over the chaotic scene. "Sir, you need to stay back," the younger officer said nervously. "This is an active police scene. We have a dangerous suspect in custody. Please step behind the crowd." Admiral Vance did not even break his stride. He looked directly through the younger officer as if the man did not exist. He had commanded aircraft carriers and entire naval fleets. A local patrolman waving a hand meant absolutely nothing to him. "Get out of my way," Vance growled. His voice was low, heavy, and extremely dangerous. The younger officer froze completely. He immediately lowered his hand and stepped aside. He felt a sudden, terrifying chill run down his spine. He realized instantly that he had just tried to block a very powerful man. Admiral Vance walked straight up to the police cruiser. He stopped exactly 2 feet away from the lead officer. The lead officer puffed out his chest, trying to maintain his intimidating posture, but he failed miserably. He looked at the older man's sharp eyes and felt a sudden wave of severe anxiety. The wealthy man in the linen shirt looked extremely confused. He took a cautious step forward. "Excuse me, sir, but this criminal attacked me," the wealthy man said, trying to regain the spotlight. "The police are handling it. You should go back to your party." Admiral Vance ignored the wealthy man completely. He did not even turn his head. He looked directly at Hudson. Hudson stood at attention as best as he could, with his hands cuffed tightly behind his back. He kept his posture perfect. He looked the older man straight in the eye. "Good morning, Admiral," Hudson said calmly. Rex let out a small, happy whine. The dog recognized the high-ranking commander immediately. The dog's tail wagged once, a clear sign of deep respect. Admiral Vance looked closely at the metal handcuffs binding his best operative. He saw the angry red marks already forming on Hudson's thick wrists. The cold fury in the Admiral's eyes ignited into a blazing inferno. He slowly turned his head to look at the lead officer. The air in the parking lot suddenly felt incredibly heavy and completely suffocating. The officers finally realized they had made a catastrophic error. "Who exactly authorized you to put my chief petty officer in chains?" Admiral Vance asked. Every single word dropped onto the pavement like a heavy, crushing stone. The final reckoning had officially arrived. The heavy silence in the parking lot was deafening. The lead officer stood completely frozen. His hand still hovered near Hudson's arm, but he did not dare touch the man again. He stared at Admiral Vance. The older man possessed a presence that demanded absolute submission. It was not just his crisp clothing or his stern face. It was the undeniable weight of decades of command. Admiral Vance had led thousands of men into combat. He had navigated international crises. A local parking lot dispute was nothing to him, but an insult to one of his men was everything. "I asked you a direct question, officer," Admiral Vance said. His voice did not rise in volume. It did not need to. It cut through the morning air like a sharpened blade. "Who exactly authorized these metal restraints on my soldier?" The lead officer swallowed hard. The dry lump in his throat made it difficult to speak. He looked down at the heavy handcuffs digging into Hudson's wrists. He suddenly realized the true magnitude of his terrible mistake. He had not verified the suspect's identity. He had not checked the black truck for a military ID. He had simply listened to a screaming woman in a pink bikini and made a snap judgment based entirely on appearances. "Sir, we received an urgent 911 call," the lead officer stammered. His previous arrogance completely vanished. He suddenly looked like a frightened rookie. "A violent assault was reported. A vicious dog was reported. We had to secure the active scene immediately." "Secure the scene?" Admiral Vance repeated coldly. He took one deliberate step closer. The officer instinctively leaned back, trying to create distance from the Admiral's intense anger. "You secured a decorated Chief Petty Officer of the United States Navy without checking a single piece of identification. You treated an active-duty Navy SEAL like a common street criminal. You did not secure a scene." You escalated a misunderstanding into an unlawful detainment." The crowd of bystanders let out a collective gasp. The revelation sent a shockwave through the gathered people. The smartphones recording the scene suddenly shifted their camera focus from Hudson to the Admiral. Whispers broke out among the tourists and locals. They realized they were witnessing a massive failure of local law enforcement. The wealthy man in the linen shirt lost his confident smile instantly. The color completely drained from his face. He looked at Hudson's stoic expression. Then he looked at the angry Admiral. Finally, he looked at the large German shepherd sitting quietly. He started taking small, careful steps backward. He desperately wanted to blend into the crowd and disappear before the situation got worse for him. "But he attacked us!" the wealthy woman cried out. Her voice sounded thin and very desperate now. She realized she was losing control of her own fabricated story. "He let his dog throw dirty sand all over our expensive blanket. He threatened my boyfriend." Admiral Vance finally turned his head to look at the couple. His eyes narrowed with intense, visible disgust. He looked at them as if they were insects ruining a perfectly good morning. "A little bit of sand blown by the wind," Admiral Vance said slowly, emphasizing the absurdity of the claim. He pointed a firm finger directly at the woman. "You called emergency services and tied up local law enforcement over a bit of sand? You explicitly accused a highly trained federal military working dog of a violent attack just to cover up your own petty, pathetic temper tantrum?" "No, that is absolutely not true," the man protested weakly. He held up his hands defensively. He was very aggressive. He looked incredibly dangerous. "We were just trying to enjoy our private picnic in peace." Admiral Vance let out a harsh, humorless laugh. The sound held zero warmth. He turned his attention back to the two police officers standing nervously near the patrol car. "Remove those metal cuffs right now," Admiral Vance ordered. It was not a polite request. It was a direct, non-negotiable command from a high-ranking military official. The lead officer fumbled clumsily with his heavy-duty belt. His hands shook badly under the intense scrutiny. He pulled out his small metal key. He stepped quickly behind Hudson. He inserted the key into the heavy metal cuffs with trembling fingers. The locks clicked loudly. The cuffs fell away and clattered softly against each other. Hudson brought his arms forward slowly. He rubbed his wrists gently. The metal had left deep, angry red marks on his tanned skin. He did not massage the skin for long. He returned to a relaxed, neutral posture immediately. He did not show any signs of pain or distress. "Are you injured, Chief?" Admiral Vance asked. His tone softened slightly, but only when addressing his loyal soldier. "No, Admiral," Hudson replied firmly. His voice remained perfectly steady. "I am perfectly fine." Rex let out a short, happy bark. The dog moved closer to Hudson and pressed his large, heavy head against Hudson's leg. Hudson reached down and stroked the dog's thick black and tan fur. The deep bond between them was entirely obvious to everyone watching. The dog was never a threat. He was a protector. "Good," Admiral Vance said. He looked back at the two police officers. "You two men need to seriously reevaluate your entire approach to police work. You allowed extreme personal bias to dictate your professional actions. You almost sent a highly trained, expensive military working dog to a local pound to be euthanized. Do you understand the severe magnitude of what you almost did here today?" "Yes, sir," the younger officer whispered. He looked down at his black boots. He felt entirely ashamed of his rash actions. "We sincerely apologize, sir," the lead officer added quickly. He tried to salvage some small piece of his dignity. "We were just trying to follow standard procedure based on the emergency call. You failed to follow the most basic investigative procedure." Vance corrected him sharply. "You will be hearing from my office regarding this specific incident. Now you have actual police work to do." Admiral Vance raised his hand and pointed directly at the wealthy couple. They had tried to sneak away toward their luxury SUV, but the dense crowd deliberately blocked their path. The onlookers now looked at the couple with open hostility and loud judgment. Those two individuals filed a completely false police report. Admiral Vance stated clearly for everyone to hear. They wasted valuable city resources. They caused the unlawful detainment of a military officer. Furthermore, they are currently guilty of trespassing. The wealthy man looked completely shocked. Trespassing? What are you talking about? We are on a public beach. You are standing in the public parking lot right now, Admiral Vance said, his voice dripping with absolute contempt. But 20 minutes ago, you set up your massive picnic on the sand directly below my wooden deck. That specific stretch of sand is clearly marked with property signs. It belongs entirely to my private estate. You willfully invaded my private property, caused a massive public disturbance, and lied repeatedly to the police. The wealthy woman opened her mouth to scream again, but no sound came out. She snapped her mouth shut. She finally realized they were entirely trapped. Their web of lies had completely unraveled in front of a dozen recording cameras. The lead officer saw a clear chance to redeem himself slightly in the eyes of the powerful admiral. He turned his stern gaze toward the wealthy couple. He pulled out his official notepad and clicked his pen. "Sir, ma'am, I am going to need to see your identification right now," the lead officer said. His voice regained all of its previous heavy authority. "You cannot be serious," the wealthy man shouted in sheer panic. "We are the victims here. You cannot possibly arrest us for a mistake. You falsely reported a violent crime and attempted to have an innocent man arrested," the younger officer added. He stepped forward confidently and placed his hand on his own handcuffs, the exact same handcuffs that had bound Hudson just moments before. "That is a very serious criminal offense in this state. Provide your identification immediately, or you will be placed under arrest." The crowd started clapping loudly. A few people cheered and whistled. The narrative had flipped completely upside down. The quiet man in the faded clothes was a respected hero. The loud, wealthy couple were the real criminals facing justice. Hudson stood quietly beside Admiral Vance. He did not smile. He did not gloat over the couple's sudden downfall. He simply watched the law finally work exactly as it was supposed to. Justice had indeed arrived on the beach, and it wore a crisp white polo shirt. The lead officer pulled a thick citation book from his front pocket. He clicked his pen. The sharp sound echoed in the quiet parking lot. He looked directly at the wealthy man in the linen shirt. "Driver's license," the lead officer commanded flatly. "Right now." The wealthy man's hands shook uncontrollably. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a slim leather wallet. He handed his identification to the officer. The woman in the pink bikini rummaged frantically through her massive tote bag. She pulled out her license and handed it over with her head bowed. She did not look at the cameras. She did not look at the crowd. All of her previous extreme arrogance had completely evaporated. The two police officers began writing. They did not show the couple any of the deference they had displayed earlier. They treated them exactly like the criminals they were. The wealthy man tried to step forward. He opened his mouth to speak to Admiral Vance. He wanted to apologize. He wanted to use his money to buy his way out of the disaster. Admiral Vance held up one single hand. The simple gesture instantly stopped the man in his tracks. "Do not speak to me," Admiral Vance stated coldly. "Speak only to the officers. You have nothing to say that I want to hear." The younger officer finished writing his section of the report. He ripped the yellow copy from the pad. "You need to pack your belongings immediately and vacate this area," the younger officer ordered the couple. "You are officially banned from this specific beach access point. If you return, you will be arrested for criminal trespassing." The couple had to perform a humiliating walk of shame back to their picnic spot on the sand. The large crowd of bystanders followed them at a safe distance. People held up their phones, recording every single miserable second. The wealthy man struggled violently with his heavy, wheeled cooler. The small plastic wheels sank deep into the soft sand. He had to drag it awkwardly. Sweat poured down his face. His expensive linen shirt clung to his back. The woman tried desperately to fold the massive, patterned blanket, The ocean wind caught the fabric and blew it forcefully into her face. She looked entirely ridiculous. She dropped her remaining crystal glass. It shattered on a rock. She did not even bother to pick up the broken pieces. She just shoved the tangled blanket and the loud portable speaker into her oversized bag. They dragged their heavy gear back up the wooden stairs. They breathed heavily. They finally reached their luxury SUV in the parking lot. The shiny vehicle no longer looked like a powerful status symbol. It just looked like a desperate getaway car. The lead officer approached the driver's side window. He handed the written citations to the man. "These are your citations for trespassing and creating a public nuisance," the lead officer explained sternly. "Furthermore, a detective will contact you next week regarding the formal criminal charges for filing a false emergency report. That is a serious misdemeanor. You will need to appear in court." The man grabbed the papers without saying a single word. He rolled up the tinted window quickly. He put the massive SUV into drive and hit the gas pedal. The tires squealed loudly on the asphalt. The vehicle sped out of the parking lot and disappeared down the busy coastal highway. The crowd in the parking lot clapped loudly. A few people cheered. Justice was rarely this swift and visible. Slowly, the bystanders began to disperse. They returned to their own beach chairs and surfboards. The loud drama was finally over. Hudson watched the luxury SUV leave. He did not feel angry anymore. He only felt a deep, quiet sense of satisfaction. He looked down at his left side. Rex sat perfectly still on the pavement. The large German shepherd looked up at his handler with bright, intelligent golden eyes. Hudson knelt on the hard asphalt. He reached out with both hands and rubbed the thick, soft fur around the dog's strong neck. "Good boy, Rex," Hudson said softly. "You did perfectly today. You held your ground." Rex leaned his heavy head against Hudson's chest. He let out a long, content sigh. His tail thumped twice against the ground. The bond between the soldier and the dog was infinitely stronger than any pair of metal handcuffs. They trusted each other completely. Admiral Vance walked slowly over to them. The intense, burning anger had finally left his face. He looked down at Hudson with deep respect and genuine pride. "You handled yourself exceptionally well today, Chief," the Admiral said. "You maintained perfect military discipline under extreme civilian pressure. You did not escalate the situation. You let their own lies destroy them. That is exactly why you wear the trident on your uniform." Hudson stood up to his full height. He nodded respectfully to his superior officer. "Thank you, sir," Hudson replied. "I appreciate your timely intervention. The situation was deteriorating quickly." The Admiral smiled. It was a rare, genuinely warm smile. "My timing was incredibly lucky," Vance admitted. But justice should never rely on pure luck. Those two patrol officers learned a very hard lesson about bias today, and those two arrogant civilians learned a much harder lesson about consequences. Admiral Vance looked down at Rex. He held out his right hand slowly. Rex stepped forward. The dog sniffed the hand carefully, then licked the Admiral's fingers in a friendly greeting. "He is a truly magnificent animal," Vance noted. He looked back up at Hudson. "We have a large barbecue going on up at the villa right now. We just put some prime-cut steaks on the outdoor grill. I think you and your partner both earned a proper, quiet meal today. Join us." Hudson looked up at the stunning glass villa sitting high on the cliff. He heard the faint, relaxing sound of jazz music floating on the breeze. He smelled the distant, mouth-watering scent of roasted meat. He smiled. "We would be honored, sir," Hudson said. The three of them walked together toward the private wooden staircase. The remaining people in the parking lot parted respectfully to let them pass. Several people nodded at Hudson. An older man softly thanked him for his service. Hudson simply nodded back. He did not seek the spotlight or the praise. He never did. He began the long climb up the wooden steps. Rex trotted happily right beside his leg. The bright morning sun shone beautifully over the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean. The ugly storm had passed entirely. The arrogant couple paid the ultimate price for judging a person solely by their plain clothes. They lost their dignity, their pride, and their freedom. Hudson and Rex kept all of theirs. True strength never needs to shout. It does not need to show off expensive items or make false, loud accusations. True strength stands quietly in the face of loud adversity and simply waits for the undeniable truth to speak. The story of Hudson and Rex at Malibu Beach teaches us a profound lesson about the danger of snap judgments and the power of quiet dignity. The wealthy couple and the police officers looked at a man in plain clothes and saw a threat. They let arrogance and bias blind them to the truth. But true strength, like Hudson's, does not need to shout to be heard. It stands firm in the face of adversity and simply waits for justice. I believe we all have moments where we judge a book by its cover. This story serves as a powerful reminder that respect should never be based on what someone wears or how much money they have. Everyone deserves dignity, especially those who silently protect our freedoms. If this story resonated with you, please share it with your friends and family. Leave a comment with your thoughts and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories. Let us spread the message of true respect and humility together. May God bless you and your loved ones with peace, wisdom, and a heart entirely free of prejudice. If you agree with this message, please type Amen in the comments below.